everyone, it's Yen again, and I have my second video out about my low dose testosterone journey. I took two very big steps, and it's been 2 weeks, so I'm actually at a point where I've now taken two injections of testosterone. I wanted to talk about my very first injection experience as someone who's not super fond of needles, and then the second injection experience was actually me self-injecting, which is a whole nother ordeal. So 2 weeks ago, it was a Tuesday, and I had ordered my prescription for testosterone. My medical provider just went over some risks for taking testosterone, and I signed my consent form. I got the little bottle of testosterone from the pharmacy. It looks like this. It's really tiny, and what's inside is this. It's this fluid it's a little thick. I think you can tell by me shaking this, and it's slightly yellow in color, but it is completely transparent. It's a 10 milliliter vial, and it cost $47.75. So I picked that up before my first injection appointment so that I had it. And don't forget to bring your testosterone with you if you do have injection appointments. I almost forgot mine, but I ended up bringing it, and I had an appointment with a nurse. Of course, there was a very helpful pamphlet or piece of paper that was given to me that outlined all of the steps and explained how we're going to be doing the shot and the proper cleaning procedures. Make sure you've washed your hands and alcohol swab to clean the little tube here, and you're going to clean your leg and all these steps. Again, I was a little nervous about the needles, and the type of injection that I was doing was intramuscular injection. So the needles are longer for that one, so they go past your initial skin and fatty layer and into your muscle. And my intramuscular injection, I do it into the side of my thighs, and every single week when I do the injection, I have to alternate, or it's just good practice to alternate which thigh I'm doing it in. So for the first one, the nurse did it on my left thigh, so come the second week, since I'm a right-handed person, I could do my first self-injection on my right side, so it was a little more comfortable that way. The second type of injection is subcutaneous injection, so instead of going into the muscle, it just goes into a shallower layer, and as a result, the needles are shorter, but intramuscular injection is a lot more of a common practice. I think it's been going on for longer. And at first I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't do intramuscular injection. Maybe I should do subcutaneous. If the needle's shorter, it sounds hypothetically better to me. I was just going to try the intramuscular just to see. For that first appointment, that first injection, walking through the steps, and the nurse was very good. They showed me and explained all the steps as they were preparing everything. Something I didn't know, I didn't do a ton of research beforehand. I'll be honest, I could have gone on YouTube or on the internet and watched a bunch of injection videos to prepare, but I didn't. I think I did a couple years ago when I was learning about what is hormone replacement therapy, what kind of ways do people take testosterone, but I had forgotten. With injection needles, and this isn't unique to hormones, this is just a medical thing, they have a gauge size, and it's a number. The nurse was saying that I was going to be using two different needles or two different gauge sizes. One is a wider opening in the needle that you put on the plunger, and it's wider so that it can pull up the medicine into the plunger. And then you take the bigger needle off and you put on a smaller needle so that you're injecting with a smaller needle. So hopefully it's not as painful. And the thing about gauge sizes for the needles, the bigger the number, the smaller the needle is. This is what the plungers look like. It's what you would think. My dose is going to be 25 milligrams or 0.25 milliliters. And so the needle I draw up with, or that I draw the medicine into it with, is a 21 gauge needle. For my first appointment, they didn't give me needles and everything up front because they didn't want me to self-inject at home without having the initial appointment with the nurse and having the nurse show me, and so that I know what it felt like. And the nurse gave me the option. She said, if you want to try and self-inject the first time, I can help prepare it, and if you want to try it, you can. But if you don't feel comfortable doing that, I can do it the first time. We'll make an appointment for next week, and if you want to try it, then you can. And if even at next week's appointment you still don't feel comfortable, no worries, I can give it to you, and we'll just keep doing it until you feel comfortable. So don't feel pressured at all, and I definitely didn't want to do it to myself the first time. This is the 21 gauge needle, and they come with these safety caps, and they're hard to see because there's so much plastic. This one's a little easier to see. Let me hold it up. It's still pretty hard to see. Oh, there you go. So you can see how long the needle is. Right there, about, is where it is. So I'd say it's 1 inch long, which is longer than I thought it was gonna be. I was so anxious because here's the bad thing. I didn't research beforehand, so I wasn't used to looking at needles or thinking about needles, and I think deep down inside I was avoiding it a little bit. So for the first appointment, when the nurse gave me my injection, okay, it did not hurt at all. I think I was just anxious from getting my blood drawn and all those lab tests. This was nothing like it. It was kind of like a little bit more than a flu shot, but really not that bad at all. And I forced myself to look at the injection being pushed into my leg because I was, I'm going to have to look at it when I do it, is what I was thinking for the next week. And the nurse was just telling me, breathe, make sure that you're breathing. Are you breathing? And I was probably audibly breathing because it was just very much a lot to look at. I wasn't used to looking at it, and I was nervous. But as I was kind of internally freaking out looking at it, I knew just from feeling the pain that it was not bad at all. So at the end of the first injection, I was super happy, and I was saying, it's not that bad at all. For next week's appointment, I really do want to try it myself. Fast forward to the next week, which was another Tuesday. It was actually yesterday. So I'm filming this today on the 4th of November. Yesterday was the 3rd of November, which is a really big day in the United States for elections. So it was very odd, kind of mixed feelings about that. Even though I was really excited for my second injection appointment, there was a lot of other emotions going on top of that 2020 pandemic problems. The week in between, I was really psyching myself up, and I was thinking, okay, think of long needles. Remember, it doesn't hurt. It's medical, it's fine. I was trying to normalize it. And I think something that's really good if you're nervous about doing your first self-injection, or even if you're nervous about getting your first injection at all, you can look up videos on YouTube or instructions, and you can practice. You can act it out. Just grab like some mechanical pencils or grab an eraser and pretend that's the testosterone bottle, and you're gonna get your syringe and put on the needle you draw up with, and just go through the motions. And that really helped ease my nerves, and especially the idea, thinking about a needle. I did this a lot in high school. I think a lot of people did, just when you're in class and you're bored. But I would get I got a mechanical pencil, and I clicked it a lot so I could grab the lead and pull it out. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna pretend that this is my needle, and I'm gonna go through all my steps, and then I'm gonna inject myself. I'm gonna stick it in, and then I'm gonna push the plunger down. And that really helped. And it was just funny to think about because, in high school you're just goofing around, but I was using it as a coping mechanism. It's the day of my second injection appointment. I go in, I do all the steps really well. I finally have the needle ready. Everything's fine up until that point, and I'm sitting on the little cushioned table bench, and I'm looking at my leg, and I just can't do it. And I feel really awkward, and the nurse is there, and she's saying, you can do it. It'll be fine. And then she's also reassuring me, if you don't feel comfortable doing it now, I can give it to you, but there's no rush. Take your time. It's just so intimidating. It's so intimidating. The needle is 1 inch long. So she said, well, you can kind of just bring it up to your leg and just see how it felt. And that was good advice when it really came down to it. So I was holding it and I kind of was poking my thigh. Like, oh, okay, it's sharp. But then I did something, and I don't suggest doing this, where I was kind of doing that, and then I did one a little harder, but then I pulled back, and I was like, ooh, that kind of hurt. And then I got a little scared, and I told the nurse, I know it doesn't hurt, but the thing I'm scared about is how much pressure does it take to break the initial kind of surface tension, to break through the initial layers, because I'm afraid I'm not putting enough pressure and then it's just gonna hurt more, or if I put too much pressure and then it'll surprise me. And they were like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, it does take some pressure, but you just have to try. Eventually, after maybe a minute or 2 minutes of me dancing around with the needle and gently pricking myself, I finally just I don't know how it happened. I really, number one thing, reminded myself to breathe in and out. That's really important. And I somehow just stuck it in. It hurt a little bit, again, not very much at all. And it was weird. It was like it was going through one texture or one material, and after it got through the initial just little couple layers or chunks a little ways, it just sunk in the rest of the way. And that sinking in the rest of the way part, very little pressure needed. It really just slid in. I couldn't feel it. That was the thing I was thinking, is like, will I be able to feel the whole inch of the needle once it goes in me? No, you really can't. You can feel the pressure from your hand that you're going through a material, but there's no resistance, or not a lot of resistance, and there's no pain during the after the initial part. The rest of it, there's no pain. I was like, oh, it's in, okay. And you don't have to sink the needle in 100% of the way. You just need to make sure it goes into the muscle. And I'm not someone who has a lot of body fat, so I didn't need to be too concerned. I'd say I stuck it in 80% of the way. I didn't do it all the way, but it was in there because I was like, this is very little resistance and it's in. So it's in, and it's kind of awkward. I'm holding the needle to my thigh, and I'm like, okay, pushing down the plunger. I get maybe about half of the medicine in, and I'm having a hard time pushing hard enough because I'm trying to be very still, holding the needle in my leg and also pushing the testosterone into my leg and not trying to wiggle or anything. It didn't hurt. There wasn't like a very sensitive pain. If it slightly moved, it hurt. That wasn't it. I was just surprised how much pressure it took to really push the tea in. And it's a pretty viscous substance, and it is a smaller needle that you're pushing it through. So that was also a little surprising. But then I pulled the needle out, and there was no sting, no pain, no resistance. And it didn't even really bleed that much. I mean, of course, I put a Band-Aid on. But yeah, so overall, the biggest thing is your mental block, which is valid. But also, it does not hurt very much at all. And it's mostly your own mind really being scared of the needle, or it was in my case. I self-injected, and after you self-inject, so you ordered your tea prescription before your first appointment, and then after I showed that I could self-inject, then they went ahead and ordered needles. And you can order needles from anywhere, or any pharmacy. I went ahead and stuck with the 23 gauge to inject, that's the smaller one, and the 21 gauge to draw up, that's the larger one. And they gave me a couple sample needles right off the bat, and syringes. There's a whole bag. There's a paper bag full of some of them. But then I actually got an order from the pharmacy, and the needles come in these long perforated packs. I would say the only other interesting thing is you do need a sharps box. So disposal of sharp medical materials is really important to keep everyone safe. It needs to be a thick plastic container. So you can buy an actual sharps box from a pharmacy or order it online. Or there are also household items like laundry detergent containers, and you put the safety, so all this plastic wrapping around the needle, that's the safety cap. And so you have to put the safety on when you're done with the needle, and you take it off the syringe and you dispose of it. And then at the very end, when you're ready to take it to a disposal site that takes sharps, you have to look it up for your area, you have to wrap the container in duct tape as an extra layer of protection. But I was reading and I saw that there was some people talking about glass containers. And I collect mason jars somewhat, or jars from grocery shopping. And so I asked the nurse about glass because I was seeing some mixed reviews, and what they said was disadvised against glass. Maybe don't do glass because the main thing they're worried about is safety. And if a glass container breaks, and then there's sharp items inside the glass container that go everywhere, that's an even bigger problem. So plastic tends to be the advised substance. And some disposal areas, some states have laws, or some areas have laws, or not laws, but policies where they don't take glass containers. They only take plastic sharps containers for disposal. So make sure that you look that up in your local area. I kind of joke to myself that this is all preparing me for the real boss fight, which is going to be getting a tattoo at some point. I'm not sure when. In the future. It'll happen eventually. If you're watching this around the time it came out, especially if you're in the United States, I just wanted to say that I know a lot of other people and friends who are not feeling very good about the current state of a lot of different aspects of their lives in the United States. There have definitely been days when I wake up and I just feel very, very terrible, and that's very valid. And if you have something going on in your life that you are excited about or happy about, like I am about starting testosterone, and that's juxtaposed with all of the other terrible, stressful, difficult things that are going on, it's okay to feel sad about things that you want to be happy about, but you are somewhat disappointed because maybe you can't celebrate them as openly as you would like, or maybe you don't feel like there's anyone around you who you can safely express your excitement with or celebrate with at all. That's really scary, and I'm very fortunate to be able to afford to start this journey. Not everyone can. I certainly couldn't afford it for years. And I just wanted to acknowledge that it's all right to be interested in hormone replacement therapy and even start hormones and not have everything be 100% perfect. Anyways, if you watched the whole video, thank you so much for listening to my stories, and maybe you learned a little something. I hope that if you're not having an even okay day, that maybe tomorrow you have a day that's a little bit better. Thanks for sticking around, and I hope to see you in another video.